Today we are going to wake up the neighborhood, Tanium style. Hey, imagine it's 10 o'clock on a Friday night. You're doing a change control for patching, and you can't get to the whole environment because users turn their machine off, right? So, how do you wake up the neighborhood so they're ready to be patched? Well, we've got somebody on the show today who solved that problem. And this is a special edition of Go-Tanium Tech Talks because this is our first customer interview on Go-Tanium Tech Talks. That's right. And we've got Brent Henderson from Raymond James, who has done some amazing little tanium crafting that he's going to share with us today. So, Brent, introduce yourself.
Hello, Ashley. My name is Brent Henderson, and I'm a lead engineer for Raymond James Financial. I work for the platform management delivery team, and we specialize in Tanium solutions and patching and things like that through the Tanium platform.
So it sounds like you've been doing this a while, because I know once we were talking about doing the show together, you said you actually spoke at Converge 2019. How long have you been a Tanium customer?
2019, but we began our POC in 2018, kind of getting an idea of what the platform could do and what it would look like in our environment.
And out of all those years of Tanium experience, we've got a lot of Tanium admins watching today. Some of them have been doing it as long as you, others have just gotten started. What would you say is the one best thing that you like about having Tanium at your fingertips in the enterprise?
It's the first platform that I've really been able to take for granted the idea that I can access any endpoint in the environment without kind of barriers to concern myself with in terms of solutions engineering. So being able to take for granted that any script that I need to run or want to run can be executed on an endpoint, no matter where it is in the globe, within a minute or two, opens up a lot of avenues for solutions engineering.
That's exactly why I came to Tanium. I was just blown away when I saw us like, wow, I can run any script anywhere and it just brings it back so fast, and it's got a grid, and it's like, oh, wow. Yeah. So yes, I know I work here, and I'm excited. I'm still excited about Tanium. All right. It still gets me jazzed, especially when we get to do custom code like this. It's a lot of fun. So let's see. Earlier when we were talking before we start the show, you said that you've been working on patching at Raymond James, and you've got some pretty aggressive patching. And tell us a little bit about that.
Being a financial company, Raymond James has high expectations for patching compliance with reason, of course. We're a popular target among people that want to do bad things. And one of the easiest ways to ensure that they can't, or at least ensure that it's more difficult for them to do so, is to make sure your assets are patched. We've been patching, with this process for a long time, but the Tanium platform has given us the opportunity to kind of take our expectations to a higher level.
And so I'm guessing that when you send up a patch deployment out there and it's doing its thing, and you're like, man, these folks, I told them leave the machine on. Is that kind of where this came from? You guys kind of edging those? I mean, it's like you guys are tuning a formula race car. Like you're just trying to get that patching compliance all the way to the top. I'm guessing that's where this came from with the Wake-on-LAN stuff we're about to talk about.
That's true. I mean, as you reach a certain level of maturity with your patching operations, you're really, at the end of that, you're really kind of fighting as hard as you can for tenths of a percentage. So anytime that you can kind of get, 1/10, 2/10, that's a big win when you're at that last mile of compliance for your environment. So that's one of the reasons why the Wake-on-LAN initiative kind of began, is that we really want to get every single tenth of a percentage that we can out of our environment as quickly as we possibly can.
Man, that's like an Olympic photo finish. I mean, like somebody, stretching their nose across the finish line to get that extra, those fractions in there. That's amazing. So how did you get into Tanium automation?
Desperation and necessity is the honest answer. Um, we had an extremely aggressive timeline for the implementation of the Tanium platform, and I was more or less working on that by myself because at any given time, our team is really highly utilized, and I didn't want to pull resources away from the team for this initiative if I could get it done myself. So in that aggressive timeline, what I was also having to do, in addition to implementing the platform, is adapting a lot of our automation to fit within the platform, because we have a significant amount of maintenance windows. Is a good example. A lot of options for our customers within the organization to select, and they've kind of grown accustomed to that level of flexibility. So things like the maintenance window automation that was part of the SCCM process had to be adapted to the Tanium platform, and that was something that I was also working on. And doing that by hand for hundreds of maintenance windows is an unpleasant experience, month over month. And our process is Patch Tuesday plus X when it comes to setting maintenance windows. So it's all dynamic. It wasn't something that was customizable within the options of the platform itself. So I kind of had to learn very quickly.
That's not just a little thing either. You've done pretty well. And I think that was the subject of your talk at Converge, wasn't it?
Yeah, that and some other kind of quality of life improvements, around deployments and setting maintenance windows and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's fast forward to the present here. I know I was looking at your blog earlier. So, folks, in the show notes below is a link to Brent's blog and his GitHub and his LinkedIn, so you can reach out to him. Go see the walkthrough that we're about to do. He's going to demonstrate for you. It's documented, okay? So you can follow that up after the show. Now don't click yet. All right, let's finish the video. Then you go, then go check out the blog. All right. So, Brent, I'm really eager to watch this work. I want to see this Wake-on-LAN thing because, true confession, I've been in IT for decades, and I've personally never had the chance to play with Wake-on-LAN. I always thought it sounded fun and cool, but I've never gotten to do that. So I'm really interested to see what you're going to do for us today.
Certainly. So when it comes to trying to wake a machine on, you can go about this in a number of different ways, but the way I prefer to do this for the purpose of the demonstration is to show both the sensor that can give you the information for targeting and the action that's going to kick off the package to wake the machine up. And in order to do that, what we can do is use the sensor that I wrote called Find Net Neighbor. And basically what this is doing is it's using the get net neighbor commandlet in PowerShell. And that commandlet has been there since, I believe, V3, so like Server 2012, Windows 8 kind of range. So for the most part, supported operating systems in the Windows space should have this commandlet, and we can kind of assume that it's going to be there. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to pass the find net neighbor sensor a specific MAC address. And if you don't know this MAC address offhand, you can set up a Tanium asset report to kind of keep a historic reference for your MAC addresses, or it may be in your CMDB depending on what your CMDB is.
Or actually, TDS would have that too, right? For your offline machines, you could just ask a question, get machine and MAC address, and you'd be able to see that from TDS as well. So lots of options there. That's great.
But in this, since we're kind of cheating, I know the MAC address offhand, but what I want to know is whether or not any assets in the environment have recently had an interaction with this device, such in a way that it's going to be in their ARP cache. The ARP cache is going to store the details of recent connections. So it's not always going to be there perpetually. And of course, it refreshes pretty aggressively. But in this case, I know the MAC address, so I'm going to just type that in.
Now, there's some real respect if somebody's typing in a MAC address off the top of their head. That's awesome, man.
I've done this test a couple of times, and I'm just going to run this on the entire environment. There's only 6 machines in my lab, so it's not a particularly problematic thing to do. But if you wanted to filter more specifically, you could. Basically, the reason, though, that I want to get this information is that a broadcast of a Wake-on-LAN magic packet cannot traverse subnets by default. And most network administrators and information security teams are not going to allow it to do so for security reasons. So basically, what I'm going to do is a subnet directed broadcast. And the way I'm going to do it is using this sensor, I can tell whether or not any of the online clients right now have ever had or have recently had an interaction with this device. So they are aware, because of the way the linear peer chain works with the Tanium client, whether or not that client has been online recently. And in this case, it did turn out that there is a device that has interacted with this device well enough that the ARP cache contains that MAC address. So I know that this device that is currently saying true is on the same subnet and has interacted with the device that I want to wake up. So since that's true, I'm going to deploy an action. And the action that I'm going to deploy is going to be the Tanium Wake-on-LAN package. And in this instance, I'm just going to let it ride. You can, type the specific MAC address that you want to target again, but this is my lab, so it doesn't really matter. There's no stakes involved. But the reason you want to do that, in an enterprise use case, is that you don't necessarily want to broadcast a wake packet to every single device and every single ARP cache. Depending on the saturation of your clients, you may wake up a lot of devices simultaneously, which could create problems. You could potentially blow a circuit depending on how many devices are on one circuit at a time in your buildings. So don't get in trouble, your building managers. Be specific when you can, or at the very least, use a generous distribute over time. But with this, I'm not going to, again, because I know it's on my network. So, cross my fingers here. We're going to see. Things always tend to misbehave during a lab. So we're going to kick this off and see what happens.
So before you hit yes, go ahead. Okay. So stop sharing your screen, because I know you got the machine sitting right beside you there. So go ahead and stop sharing your screen. And then I'm going to watch this machine. Now go ahead and hit the yes button, and let's watch the machine sitting beside you and see how long it takes for the lights to come up.
Shouldn't take too long. My kind of expectation is like 20 seconds or so. It seems to be about.
Mm-hmm. I imagine you've done this a time or two.
Yeah.
Wow. There it is, man.
So, about 20 seconds,
Oh, well, and Tanium time, right? That's lightning speed. So that's amazing. Wow. That's a fun magic trick right there. You're sending the magic packet to wake up the machine. That's a lot of fun. You should do that trick at parties, man.
I don't necessarily know that it would entertain everybody as much as it entertains us, but you never know. People do tend to like flashy stuff.
All right, so that's cool. So now to set the context for everybody here, you're in the middle of a patching event, and it could be, a 0 day, all hands on deck kind of thing, and somebody's left their machine turned off. You got to get it patched. So we've got our patching reports already in Tanium. We can see which machines are not patched showing up in the list. So we take the MAC address, we look for machines in the neighboring subnet, and then we target that machine with this broadcast, or direct it to just that one machine, or a broadcast that'll get all the machines in that subnet. Did I get that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Depending on the way you do it, you can hit everything, or you can be very specific at what you're trying to do. It really just depends on the use case.
Yep. So now that machine's up online, showing up in system status in Tanium, and now they're going to get that patch deployment, or maybe it's a deploy package with an application update that's critical, whatever it is that you need to do to interact with that machine. Now it's online. Well, that is a great trick. I mean, and I can only imagine like doing that broadcast. That's like a rooster crowing on the subnet. Like, hey, everybody, get up. Here comes Brent. He's got some patches for you. It's like shaking the chicken pan and the feed pan. All the chickens come running. I guess I don't know how many people here played with chickens. It's kind of in vogue these days to raise your own chickens for your own eggs. But anyway, yeah, the roosters crow and letting us know that we got some patches coming.
And the beauty part again too, like we talked about earlier, Ashley, is that I couldn't necessarily do this with other solutions because of the way that they work versus the linear peer chain with the Tanium client. That being able to assume that the client is aware of the 10 IP addresses of the clients before it and after it kind of gives me some flexibility for engineering here. So I can kind of enforce my will upon the environment and get them to wake up and do the work that they need to do in order to be compliant for this type of deployment.
Yep. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you, when you go out to the GitHub link here in the show notes, you're going to find some scripts. And then when you go to the blog post in the show notes, you're going to see what to do with those scripts. He's got a walkthrough right there on the blog. It's going to tell you, create this sensor, create this package, attach those scripts, paste these things in, and you'll be all set. It's just like a recipe. And there's already people commenting on the rest on the blog saying, hey, this is great. Thank you. So other people are using this content as well. And as always, I know Brent's cautioned you a couple times here. Just be careful, don't test in production, right? Test in a lab. Brent's got his lab here at home. So make sure you test in a lab first and then have some fun and let us know, how this works out for you. Brent, that is really fun to watch. Now, for our viewers at home, would you take us in and show us the custom sensor and the custom package that you created with those scripts out on your GitHub?
Certainly. So let's cover the sensor first. It's just called Find Net Neighbor. And it is not a particularly complicated script. What we're doing here is we are capturing the parameterized sensor value and making sure that it's unescaped because of the way that Tanium passes parameterized values to the clients. And aside from that, what we're primarily doing here is making a determination about whether or not the get.NetNeighbor commandlet with an IPv4 configuration for the address family and certain filtering for the state of the MAC addresses is satisfied, and whether or not it contains the MAC address that we passed it. And if it does contain that MAC address, it will return a true, and if it doesn't, it'll return a false.
All right. So what we're doing is we're passing in a parameter, the MAC address. Hey, we're looking for this. Has anybody seen this MAC address around you lately? And if it shows up in their cache from the get.NetNeighbor commandlet, I had to look up that commandlet because I was looking through your stuff, and I've done PowerShell for years, and I've never used that commandlet. So now I've learned a new commandlet. You taught me a new commandlet. Thank you. Scroll back up to the top of let's just go back to the top of the sensor and kind of take it from the top slowly here, just for the folks who might be new to custom content. So you can put in whatever you want up here as far as categories and descriptions and so forth. But it's nice to see like the max sensor age and some things like that you've set. That all looks good.
Yeah, when it comes to the max sensor age, it really doesn't make sense to go much further beyond 15 minutes anyways, just because we're dealing with the ARP cache and it's constantly refreshing itself. The only kind of real thing to take into consideration is the parameterized inputs. When you're configuring that, be really deliberate about your configurations and take your time and make sure that you get that right. You want everything here to match what's written in the blog post, or else it won't work, because that content is assuming that like MAC address, MAC_address is going to be reflected. So
yeah,
just
go ahead and
time.
click on that parameter there, and let's see, because I want people to see this. This is something you don't see every day when you're creating a custom parameterized sensor like this, you can actually define the data type and all this information, the default values, the validation expressions. So lots of goodness right there. And so, yeah, you can follow this video. You can also look at the steps on the blog. Very good.
Yeah, and if with the validation expression, it's regex. And if you don't fully understand regex, that's okay. There's like 3 people in the world that do, so it's understandable. I had to cheat when it came to this expression. So don't feel ashamed if you don't know this by heart, because most people do not.
Yep, we all copy from somewhere. Yeah. All right. So, and I know when I was looking at your GitHub, you said you found some of this PowerShell code in the PowerShell community.
I did. The send-packet script was sourced from the community, and all the attributions are in my blog post. I make very careful, consideration to credit people with their work, just because it's the right thing to do. But yeah, I did credit that work, and that is used. So the send-packet.ps1 file is what constructs the magic packet that's going to be delivering that packet to the endpoint or endpoints that are designated depending on your use case.
Well, let's go take a look at that package.
So this package is named Go-Tanium Wake-on-LAN. And as you can see here, there is a command to call, put some specific flags to keep it quiet, the wake controller.ps1 file with a target mag of $1. That's just an indication that a value is going to be passed as a parameter to this command. And I left it as part of core content. I gave the command 5 minutes to run, because depending on the way you run it, it may go through the MAC addresses in the ARP cache serially. So that can take a little bit of time, not 5 minutes, but I left it at that. The send-packet.ps1 file is the packet that was community sourced, and that's the one that's going to construct the magic packet. The wake controller is my content, and that's just the controller file that's going to take the parameterized input, unescape those values into a string, and then depending on what you're doing, either send it to everything or send it to one address.
And so those scripts are all out on the GitHub, and you just attach those there with the add file. And then you've got your parameter down here. It looks very familiar from what we did with the sensor.
Yep, the regex and all of the kind of validation values remain the same, just for consistency's sake. If you pass the default value, that's targeting everything. So we'll probably be changing that just for protection's sake.
All right, so we have a custom sensor and a custom package working together to wake up the neighborhood. All right. Well, again, thank you for that magic show, watching the power lights come on. That was just fun. You can't get fun like that every day in IT. So I'm sure it's gratifying to you run a script and you watch the light come on. It's like the hello world, right? Of I think when Raspberry Pi people, they turn the light bulb on. That's like their hello world, right? I mean, so you can turn the light bulb on in hundreds of machines at once. That's a lot of fun.
It is. It's very cool. And I mean, once you kind of are comfortable with the script and the targeting and all that logic, and you understand what you can get away with, it is fun to wake a few hundred machines up at once if you're in the room. Like, wake up, my pretties. It's time to do work. And they all make their magic little sounds together in unison for the first time, or uniquely. So it's pretty fun.
That is neat. So now that you've used this in production in your environment for a while, what difference has it made?
Again, we're kind of going for tenths of a percentage. So I have seen a couple of percentage points of improvement, or not a couple of percentage points, a couple of tenths of a percentage points of improvement when it comes to patching compliance. More often than not, what we're looking for is time to compliance, because these devices will be turned on eventually. So I want to reduce, the amount of time to those great SLA numbers that we're aiming for. I want to reduce it from this to this, and that's mostly what's being accomplished with the Wake-on-LAN, is that we can accelerate that timeline and get these machines patched as quickly as possible. And even if it's not patching, if it's something critical, like a critical configuration that has to be done, this week, and we have to leverage every single weeknight to make that happen. When we're using the Wake-on-LAN to get these devices online, we can kind of ensure that, hey, to the best of our ability, we're going to hit as many devices as possible. If it's online, I can't really help, or if it's offline, I can't really help you. If it's in a closet, I can't really help you. But for those devices that are just sitting there waiting for somebody to do something to them and don't have anybody on them at the time, it's a great help.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us, because I'm guessing there's some other customers out there with similar situations. So you can find this in the show notes below. There are links to his GitHub, to his blog, buildbreakautomate.com. So, Brent, anything else you want to hit here as we wrap up?
No, I think you hit the key points, that it's just important to test. I mean, of course, we always come into solutions engineering and kind of community content with the best of intentions, but I can't predict how your environment's going to behave. And I am human as well. So there are mistakes, of course. Everybody is learning. So just be cautious, take your time, do your testing, and we'll see you on the other side.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brent, for being the first customer guest on Go-Tanium. Now, if you're watching today's show and you're thinking, well, I would like to be a guest on Go-Tanium, you can do that. Email us, go@tanium.com, and we'd be happy to get you on the show as well. Also, I want to give you a little teaser. Brent is coming up here soon on the Endpoint Explorers Twitch live stream. And then after the live stream, they'll drop those videos on the same YouTube channel where you found this video. So stay tuned, because Brent has been cooking up a number of automation solutions with Tanium, and you're going to get to see a totally different solution on that episode. So be sure to check that out. So Brent, again, thank you for joining us on this episode of Go-Tanium Tech Talks. And this, folks, is another example of why Tanium is that fantastic platform. If you're a scripter, an automator, all of a sudden you have all the tools at your fingertips to do things that you only dreamed of in the past, and now they're possible with Tanium. So there you have it, folks. We've learned how to wake up the neighborhood Tanium style. Until next time, Go-Tanium.